the idea that financial independence is all about some number on your account statement, or even worse, that you don't qualify because of where you started out. That's just not true. It's not about some well-kept secret of the wealthy. It's about finding the right information and knowing how to apply it. On the Get Ready for the Future show, we're answering your questions so you can start making real financial change today. The journey to true financial independence begins right here, and it starts with you.
The countdown to 2025 is on. Just a few more shows left until we turn the page on the calendar as we welcome you into another edition of the Get Ready for the Future show, coming to you from the 6th floor of 3 Financial Center in our West Little Rock office. Glad to have you along. My name is Scott Inman, answering your questions today. With me is Teresa Arrigo from our Conway office, and we've got some good questions coming up on today's show, and we're going to get to that in just a minute. But as we sit here in this Get Ready for the Future show, our weekly show for the week of December 9th, we have just 2 more shows after this one for the year. And we are offering, I want to start the show by bringing this to your attention. We started this offer last week. We are offering a half off cost of a financial plan for the month of December. Now, what that basically means is, and if you've listened to our show much at all, Teresa, over the years, you know that we are planners first. We're going to do investment management after the plan is put into place. And that planning, we charge a fee for because our services are compensated for there, and then you're under no requirement to invest with us, right?
Correct.
So just for our services, much like if you go to an estate planning attorney, which we have an estate planning question coming up in just a moment, you'd pay a fee for their service, you pay a fee for the financial plan. That ranges from $500 to about $1,500 or so, depending on your asset level. And we're going to slice that in half. We're going to offer a chance for you to get in and do it for half the cost. But the caveat is you have to call before the end of the month.
So do they have to schedule for December or just schedule it in December?
I'm glad you asked. That's where I was going next. So that is true. You do not. You just have to make the phone call and schedule the appointment. It can be next June if that's the soonest you can get to us. But we need it on the calendar. You need to make the phone call and schedule the appointment prior to December 31st. Just had actually someone I actually knew reached out and scheduled theirs. They are actually going to get in before the end of the month, but I told them that it can be January, it can be February, whenever you can actually get in. It's a great opportunity to get half off the cost of a financial plan from GenWealth Financial Advisors. So I hope you'll do that. The number to call is 866-653-PLAN. That's 866-653-7526. All right, we mentioned the questions. We mentioned one's going to be an estate planning question, and that's who we're kicking the show off with today. It's Bob. He sent in a text, and here is his question. Which is best, a will or trust for man and wife with less than $2 million net worth, with 3 children, and 75 years old? Great question, Bob. You've given us some good details there. First of all, we'll start with a disclosure. We are not estate planning attorneys, so we are not giving you advice, but we can walk through the things that you need to consider when determining your need for a will and or a trust. So I guess kicking it off, Teresa, let's kind of start with the differences, the key differences, and there is a certain hierarchy. The basic level here would be the will, and the next level would be the trust.
Yes, and I would say it's good that you're having this conversation now, because the vast majority of Americans die what's called intestate, which means they don't have anything. They don't have a will, they don't have a trust, nothing. So a will is certainly better than nothing, but it's not likely going to be enough if your goal is to simplify the transition of assets when you're no longer here. The will is great for deciding who gets grandma's china, but it's not great for allocating assets in general. So great place to start, but I feel like based on my experience, it's not going to get you probably where you're expecting it to.
Yeah, I think a very basic estate, potentially a will, is going to be sufficient. But I think the big difference, or the big thing you need to consider here, a will is going to express your wishes on paper, and it will be followed, but it will be followed through the court process, through what's called probate. And I think that's the big key here, is a will, and a lot of people don't know this, and Bob, you may know this, but you will not avoid probate. Your estate will not avoid probate if all you have is a will. That process will still occur, and there is a substantial cost to that. if you look online, you'll see this. The price tag is based on assets, and the average, it's a wide range, is 3 to 7% of the total value of your estate. So if you did some quick math, and you said less than $2 million, that's a kind of a big range. We don't know how much less than $2 million. But if you had $2 million, if your estate was worth $2 million, then 7% of that, on the top end of that, would be $140,000 that your estate would have to pay in probate. If you do the trust, that's off the table. It avoids probate. So that's a key.
And let's be clear, though, if you do the trust and you properly execute it, because that thing is just a stack of papers unless you do the homework that the attorney gives you. The other thing that it costs you, even beyond that with probate, is time. You know, I had to probate an estate at one point several years ago, and I had to make multiple trips 2 hours away from where I live to go deal with different tasks. And the probate itself, once you start, you open the case, which takes time, you still have to wait 6 months before you can do anything. So imagine you had car payments that need to be made or a mortgage that needs to be made during that time period. Your family may be hamstrung. Now, there are assets that avoid probate if you have, for instance, qualified assets, IRAs, employer plans, and you have properly named beneficiaries. That can avoid probate. There are some assets that you can assign, like a payable on death at the bank. But otherwise, it's going to be a lot of work, a lot of time, and a lot of money for whoever is having to take care of that when you're no longer here. Yeah,
so that was part of the answer to your question too, Bob, is knowing you have less than $2 million is not really a qualifier on yes or no to will or, well, we definitely think will at basic, but whether you need a trust. Where that $2 million is matters, right? Is the majority of this in your real estate and your home? Then that would probably point us more towards the trust, because that would be a very efficient use to put those assets into a trust. But if it's all in IRA money, well, that IRA money, as Teresa has already alluded to, is a beneficiaryized account. In other words, if you put a primary beneficiary on that and a contingent beneficiary on that, when you pass, it's going to go that direction, right? It doesn't need the trust to be executed, to be sent to the beneficiaries. However, and you do say you're 75 years old and have 3 kids, we're going to assume those kids are grown. If they're adults and you have no problem handing over all of those assets at one time, then that's probably okay. But when you have younger children, or if you have adult children that you really want some governors on, right? You want some restraints. You don't want to hand them over $500,000 all at once. The assets could go into the trust and be pieced out over time. Now, there are some limits to that, even if it is in the trust now, which didn't exist prior to 2020, and that's the inherited IRA rule. So they're still going to have to pull it out, even if it goes into the trust, over a 10-year time frame, but at least can put some restrictions in place. And if you have some desires for things to happen in a restricted way, that's certainly something to consider.
And a protective way. So if you have children and they inherit assets and then they go through a divorce, if they've taken ownership of those assets, those are marital assets. So they're going to split that. But if you create subtrust within your plan, then it can be held within those subtrusts, and it's not ever taken ownership. Nobody can sue them for that money. Nobody can divorce them and take that money. There's some real specific protections you can put in place through estate planning that you just can't do through a will or even through your beneficiary designations.
Yeah, I think it would be fair to say, Bob, a trust is best, even if it isn't necessary. So I think you just have to walk through your desires with an estate planning attorney and figure out your need. But then the other piece of that, and we'll kind of close the answer to your question here with this, it is really the estate planning process is more than just a will or a trust or both. You also have some other considerations there that you haven't asked us about that we probably should go over. When you talk about power of attorney, when you talk about healthcare directives.
Yes, and there's 2 ways to do that power of attorney. You can set it up where at the point where you sign that document, whoever you've named can sign documents on your behalf. They can take care of your healthcare needs on your behalf. Or you can do what's called a springing power of attorney for your medical or your financial, where if you are incapacitated, then they can get the power. But, having that in place is also important. If I were down for 3 or 4 months, or my husband and I were both down, someone needs to take care of our children. Someone needs access to our funds to help them and to help us make decisions. So it's more than just who gets things when I'm gone. And if you're having a properly executed estate plan, it's going to include those. It may also, if you want it, include what's called a medical directive that says, hey, if I'm in a certain state, here are the things that I want done, here are the things I don't. It gives you some power to help your family know what your wishes are.
So in conclusion, we talked about the probate cost and how absorbent that can be. The typical cost in Arkansas is going to be around $2,500 to $3,000 for the full estate planning kit there, or the estate planning binder that you would have at the end of that process. There are also options if you don't have a real complicated estate plan. We would like to let you know that new to GenWealth, we are beginning to facilitate estate planning. And again, we mentioned we are not estate planning attorneys, but we can help guide our clients through the estate planning process using a company called wealth.com. So, Bob, if you're interested in exploring that, the cost is going to be less than it would be for estate planning attorney services. You could contact us, and if anybody else is listening, which I know that's what a lot of people do is they're listening to other people's questions, but they likely have the same exact question. You can reach out and inquire about the estate planning process at GenWealth by calling us at 866-653-PLAN. That's 866-653-7526. If you haven't done any estate planning, I would encourage you to at least consider that over the holidays as you have some downtime. Start thinking about what your wishes would be after you're gone, and work with a financial advisor at GenWealth to facilitate the estate planning through wealth.com, or reach out to an estate planning attorney. One
of the biggest kind of barriers that I have discussed with clients is that they feel like it's going to be this very complicated process where they have to have all their ducks in a row walking in. I want to encourage you that it's just like the financial planning process. There are some pieces that you'll need to know: names, date of birth, who matters, who you want things to go to a degree. But we can help you outline that stuff, help you work through who you want to include to make it a little more manageable for you. I just want to encourage you, it's not as complicated as you probably think it is.
All right, next up on the Get Ready for the Future show, we've got a question from Trey. He sent in an email and writes, I want to hear more about the Arkansas Public Employee Retirement System. What's your opinion of the plan? What else can state employees be doing outside of this plan? And what happens once you have reached 28 years of service? Trey, thanks for the question. If you have access, I'll start with this, to a pension in 2024, we are going to say our opinion is very high of that. Certainly, if you are a participating member of APERS, then you're required to put that money in. So you don't have a lot of say-so in it, but it is a very good option for you to build in a guaranteed retirement income source. And Teresa, we talk about it all the time on this show. Retirement is essentially an income problem. So you want to have assets that produce income, and we'll get to the fact that we really think even state employees need to have more assets available than just that pension. But when you have a pension, you are across the board ahead of the game versus someone who is not.
Yes, and it's becoming, I jokingly call it a unicorn. Yeah. Because they're disappearing.
They are.
When you get into public service, it says there's a lot of people that still have access to that, but only 9% of private industry workers have access to a pension. Yeah. So, a lot of us, my concern as an advisor is that a lot of us watched our parents retiring with a pension or our grandparents retiring with a pension, and we're not realizing that we are going to have to save a lot more money to be able to provide the income we need in retirement if we don't have access to that. So, if you've got access to a pension, I encourage you to participate in it and make sure that you're getting the full benefit out of it. Stay long enough to get vested and those sorts of things that we'll talk about in a minute.
Yeah. So if the only real risk to this is legislative risk, really. I mean, the state legislator can make changes to it, and we have seen that with Arkansas teachers' pensions, and the changes are relatively small. They start to require more contributions for less total benefit, but in general, you're still going to receive a guaranteed income check that you can't outlive in addition to Social Security. So that's 3 checks if you're married, right? 2 Social Security checks and a pension from APERS. So Trey, I would say it's a very good retirement system, but it shouldn't be the only thing you do. Yes. So what else can you do outside the plan? And that's a great thing for him to be thinking about, because he doesn't want to rely only on the pension. And I would say that is a little bit of a slippery slope that a lot of state employees or public employees can fall into, a false sense of security because they think of the pension as their retirement, and that's going to take care of them. The great thing is there is going to be a cost of living adjustment on that pension, so it will help
on that particular one, but not all pensions.
Correct. On that particular, you're right. On the public pensions, they typically are. Private pensions, typically not. So if you have a cost of living adjustment, again, it enhances the benefit of that pension. So you're going to potentially keep up with the day-to-day inflation. But if you think about living in retirement on a monthly check and nothing else, I don't think you want to go there. You want to have some assets to be able to do other things. Can you maybe get by with that? Sure. But do you want to live that type of retirement? A restricted retirement, Teresa, is not financial independence.
Yes, and that's, you hear people talk about, oh, I'm on a fixed income. And that's usually what they're talking about. They've got Social Security and a pension. And it is what it is. If they have a major expense, if they haven't already had some other assets set aside, that could really derail their financial independence. So it's important to plan ahead. And what options do you have? Well, you have the same options to a degree that everybody else has. You have IRAs, Roth IRAs if you qualify. If you have a spouse, they may have an employer plan that you can have them contributing to and getting their match as well. Specifically with APRS, the Arkansas plan, you do have Arkansas Diamond. This one's a little bit different than most employer plans. It's a 457 is the code to it. But basically, you can defer your compensation like you would inside of a 401k, but you don't get the match because they're matching your funds in the pension plan. You can do that to help building up your assets for retirement as well. And it is pre-tax, so it does lower your taxable income for your tax returns now.
Yeah, so and the difference is there on the withdrawal side is in a 401k or an IRA for sure, you have to be 59 and a half to be able to withdraw those funds without incurring a 10% penalty in addition to the taxes that are going to be due on that withdrawal. But with the 457, it really was created for public employees because in many cases they're going to retire prior to age 59 and a half. With the Arkansas Diamond and other 457 plans, you'd actually be able to take out money before 59 and a half if you're retired. So if you end up leaving APRS at 55, that is non-penalized money available to you. It'll still be taxed, but it has never been taxed because it's pre-tax contributions. But it's a great way to bridge a gap to some other assets that are available at 59 and a half. So great opportunity there. The taxation is at ordinary income tax rates, but we would encourage you to meet with an advisor. You can meet with one here to discuss what options you do have. Don't just start picking one without probably walking through it and building a financial plan with an advisor. But we talked about retiring prior to age 59 and a half, and that was the other part of his question. What happens when you reach 28 years of service? First of all, you do not have to complete 28 years of service to receive a retirement benefit. In the APRS plan specifically, again, we're talking about the Arkansas Public Employee Retirement System, not all plans. You are vested after 5 years of service. And if you have put in at least 5 years of service, you will receive some benefit at age 65, and that would be your full benefit. Now, obviously, the longer you work between 5 and 28, the bigger that full benefit is going to be. The 28 years comes into play when you have completed 28 years, you can retire at that time. You don't have to wait, Teresa, till 65 to receive a benefit.
And your benefit won't be affected by you retiring early. Exactly. That's one of the big things. If you retire before 28 years and you're younger than 65, there's going to be a bit of a penalty on the benefit that you receive. It's going to be lower, just like if you took Social Security early. And you can continue to work, and that's where you can do their DROP plan, which is the Deferred Retirement Option Plan. What happens then is they freeze your years of service. So you will only get credit for 28 years of service, even though you stay additionally. But a portion of that pension payment that would have come to you goes into an account for you, into an account for your retirement. It is going to be pre-tax again, but it's a fantastic way to build some additional assets on top of the pension for retirement. I mean, that accelerates so quickly from what I've observed.
Yeah, and the reason it's there is because they don't want to lose good people, right? I mean, we see that with the teacher pension a lot because it's hard to find teachers. There's a teacher shortage. So encouraging them to continue to be in the classroom and still be able to give them a part of their pension to put into an interest-bearing account that will grow. We've seen that make huge differences in someone's retirement. It certainly works that way for APRS as well. So again, working through that. The other option is to not do DROP and take your pension, but maybe you're going to work because, again, the other piece to that is you step out at 55, 56 years old, you got to have some purpose.
Yes.
And that's a big piece to this too. If you like the job, then it certainly makes sense to go through the drop program and build additional assets while you're continuing to work. If you don't like the job, then you can begin taking your pension, but maybe work somewhere else and create your own drop account, quite frankly.
And I will say, though, the thing to watch with that from what I've observed is the drop puts 63% of what would have been your benefit in there. So it does put more in than you're likely to put into like a 401k or something along those lines. So it does build faster. But the other thing to watch is once you enter drop, you have 10 years. And then you're going to have to retire for a period of time to be able to, it stops accumulating after that. So I want to be clear, if you do it, make sure you're within that 10-year window of when you want to retire so that you don't have to deal with the chaos that might happen at the end of that if you're not ready to retire yet.
Yeah, and we'll close with this, Trey. We don't know whether you're just stepping into APRS and trying to learn more about it and you're a long ways off from actually drawing a benefit, or if you're kind of at the end of your work life and you know that you've been you've been contributing to this thing, but you don't really understand it that much. If that's you, or if that's anybody listening, we need to also talk about making the right distribution option inside of that pension, because a lot of people will be looking at that and choosing the biggest benefit. There's going to be options in APRS and any pension to potentially have some for your spouse if something. I don't even know. I don't think we even heard. Nope, we don't even know if Trey's married. I don't think so.
I don't think he said.
Yeah. So if he's married, and he takes the straight life option, Teresa, then if he passes prior to his spouse, then she's going to get nothing.
Yes, and I have a kind of a bit of a personal passion about this. My mom and my stepdad have both passed away. He was, I think, 8 years older than my mom. And when she was getting ready to retire as a teacher, she wanted to take the single life. But I had thankfully started working here. And I encouraged her to do some sort of spousal benefit. And then she passed away a year later. She had been putting into the system for over 20 years. And had she passed away without a spousal benefit, there would have been no distributions from it. And he did eventually pass away several years later, but it helped. It really saved him from financial ruin. And it also, we felt like she got some benefit out of it, because with a pension, once it's gone, it's gone. So it's really important to make sure you're looking at that not as an individual piece, but as part of your overall plan and making sure it fits everything that you need it to do. Yeah.
So your decisions on what type of account to add contributions to, how to invest those dollars, and then at the end of your work life, how to take your pension, what distribution options to choose are certainly part of a reason to visit a financial advisor. And we do that all day, every day, building retirement income plans for our clients and guiding them along the way, helping them discover, protect, and share true financial independence. If you'd like to get started, now is a great time. We told you at the top of the show that we are offering half off our financial planning fees for the month of December, but you got to get in and make that phone call and schedule your appointment. We can meet in January or February or even later, but we need you to make that call before the end of the month to take advantage of our half off financial planning fee offer. You can call 866-653-PLAN. That's 866-653-7526 to schedule your appointment. And this is our question of the week. Thanks for sending it in, Trey. And we're going to give you a free Get Ready for the Future Show tumbler for being named the question of the week. All we need you to do is send us an email to show@getreadyforthefuture.com to claim it. Next up, it's James from Benton. I'm 65, retired, and own my own home. I have $150,000 to invest. What should I do with it? Well, James, we're going to need a little more info. We're assuming
we can postulate a little here.
Yeah, we can postulate. We can pontificate with the best of them. So we're going to assume if you're 65, retired, and own your own home, you got some pretty low expenses. At least you don't have much debt. We're going to assume that your expenses are being covered. So the way he phrases the question, I'm going to think that the $150,000 is outside of what he needs, right? So what is the purpose of the money? Do you just want to grow it? Do you want to pass it on someday? Do you need income from it? What other assets do you have? We can assume that that's all he has is $150,000, but we don't know. So I think that would be the questioning process that we're going to have to work through to make some determinations.
Yes, and before we want to invest $1, we need to make sure your emergency savings are intact. This is something that I have had to do in the past. Whenever the market dips, I have some younger clients that'll say, hey, I've got extra money. It's their emergency savings. So I've learned to ask about that. In general savings, do you have enough set aside for other goals and this is truly surplus, or is this needing to be allocated to something else first? Because we want to have our ducks in a row.
Yeah. So when you think about a lump sum that, and I don't know where it is now, if he has $150,000 to invest, is it in cash now? A piece of that needs to remain, obviously, for your emergency fund, and we can help you determine what that number needs to be. There's different ways, different rules of thumb to think about. It might be 3 to 6 months of expenses. If it really requires $5,000 a month for you to make ends meet, then you might look at 15, maybe even twice that, up to 30. That would probably be a little high considering your income might be guaranteed income and you don't have to worry about losing a job in retirement. So I don't know that the expense route is the better way to go. But in retirement, you're going to have replacement costs. That's the other thing I think about when I think about meeting deductibles on insurance costs or replacing an HVAC unit. There are known and there are unknown replacement costs. You may know you're going to need a new vehicle in the next few years. So those are things that would need to be considered to determining how much of that $150 needs to stay in cash, assuming that's all he has and doesn't have an emergency fund on the sidelines.
And I would say if James were calling me, what I would want to do is an overall review of your assets and an overall review of your plan, because the way we work, we don't like to look at things through a knothole. So this $150,000, where does it fit in your overall plan? Have you taken time to evaluate your required income, your desired income, and created a strategy that takes you through that and make sure that you don't run out of money, you don't lose your independence, and that you've got what you need in place already before we do anything with this money?
Yeah, the required versus desired income is a big conversation piece for our clients in the meeting room. Do you have enough guaranteed income to pay your bills, or even to extend beyond that, have a basic lifestyle in retirement that you want? That needs to be your required. That is your required income, and it needs to be met with guaranteed monthly income. And then above and beyond that is your discretionary or desired income. What does retirement look like for you? What would you like to do? This is your dreaming session. What do you want to do in retirement, and how much is that going to require on a monthly basis? And that's where your assets can be used to produce income over your lifetime. James, thanks for the question. I want to remind you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We know many of you watch our show online on YouTube, but also we know probably, this is a guess because I don't really know this for sure, but I'm going to guess that most people still listen on the radio. At least that's the feedback I get from people that come in and schedule appointments based on the Get Ready for the Future show. And we're on podcast. I know that's growing as well, but we do have a video version of the show. So if you listen on the radio or on podcast, and you hear us every once in a while go, hey, take a look at this graphic, and you're like, what graphic? It's the radio. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel and watch the Get Ready for the Future show, but you can also get exclusive content you can't get anywhere else to help you discover, protect, and share true financial independence. It's what we're about at GenWealth Financial Advisors. It's how we serve our clients, and it's the education component, and the reason we're on the air is to help you do that. So just search for GenWealth Financial Advisors and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Last question on the show today is from Peggy in Little Rock. With interest rates stabilizing, should I consider adjusting my investment strategy or allocation between equities and fixed income products? Peggy, thanks for the question. Let's define more clearly what she means by fixed income, because there's a little bit of potentially a misnomer there between what is fixed income and what is not, or what she's referring to here. Fixed income could be a CD. It could be something that is not putting principal at risk and receiving a specific interest rate or yield over time. It could also mean bonds, which are not necessarily principal protected. If you own a paper bond that is a 10-year bond and you held it for those entire 10 years, it's principal protected. If it's to the extent of the paying ability of the provider or the person who has released that debt instrument. If it's a U.S. bond, then that's probably one of your safest choices there. But most people, when they talk about fixed income in their portfolio or their allocation, they're talking about bond funds, bond mutual funds, and those do have a risk to principal. They are interest rate sensitive. And so Peggy's question here, Teresa, is about interest rates stabilizing, and they are to an extent in that they're not going up anymore, but they are starting to go back down.
Yes.
At much less the severity that they went up.
Not nearly as aggressive on this end of things as they were on the other end.
Yeah. So when you think about the environment we're in, it does make sense to take another look at bonds. In 2022, it was the worst year on record, second worst year, I think, on record for the 60-40 portfolio, which is 40% bonds. They got beaten up. Equities got beaten up, so did bonds. But it was because interest rates were spiking. Well, now you're in a situation where if they're stabilizing or potentially even going down, it's a much more attractive time to look at bonds. I think the amount of exposure, if she's looking at changing her allocation, certainly depends on some other things that we need to determine first.
Yes, and I think it's important to understand the relationship that bonds have to interest rates when it comes to their values. When we saw interest rates rising, think of it like a teeter-totter, and I just hit my microphone, but hopefully it didn't kill you. Think about a teeter-totter. When rates go up, the bond prices will drop. So their value, if you were trying to sell them, would drop. Opposite is true. Interest rates have been dropping, which means bond prices will actually increase, which gives you an opportunity for growth, a little bit of growth. Granted, we got to be reasonable because they're still bond funds. But it does allow you the opportunity to maybe get a little more out of those than you normally could. But I do want to be cautious of the terminology that we use because we call it fixed income. But dividends aren't always guaranteed, and a lot of fixed income products will have dividend payers in them and not necessarily just bonds. So understand that there is risk in all investing. So you want to make sure that you're pointing back to your plan when you're making investment decisions. It's not about a specific product. It's about whether what you're doing still aligns with your plan. Because if it doesn't, that's the time to consider a change, not before.
So let's talk about building that plan. And the plan is all about time. You know, I say oftentimes we see the GenWealth clock behind us here on our video version of the Get Ready for the Future show. There's a reason for that. Investing and an investment strategy should be based on a time horizon. So again, back like we talked a moment ago in the question before, what is the purpose of this money? We don't want to just start tweaking our investment strategy or allocations just because of the macroeconomic environment. You can, but we would prefer to look at your purposes for investing in the first place. And the overwhelming majority of the people we work with, their time horizon is retirement. They are putting it in for taking it back out when they reach their date of financial independence or their retirement date. So if Peggy is 55 and she wants to retire at 65, we've got a 10-year time horizon, and the overall investment strategy needs to react accordingly, really to some degree, regardless of what the macroeconomic environment is.
And I think too, she doesn't really just have a 10-year time horizon because she's not going to you're not going to need every dollar day one of retirement. So that's why the plan is so important, because even at retirement, there are going to be assets that you need to defer for a period of time. So if you look at this as an overarching approach based on your plan, then that will guide you about how much to have in each category of investments.
Yeah. So really, if you're 10 years, 15 years out from a retirement date, your growth strategy, right? Your strategy is to grow your assets. You want to be in asset classes that are going to outpace inflation. That's going to be equities. That's going to be alternatives like real estate. But if you are closing in on retirement, and our video viewers are seeing this now, you are really entering into the retirement red zone, and the bucketing strategy needs to begin to take hold of your overall investment strategy, which basically means for your short-term money, if you're going to be retiring tomorrow, you need to be risk off on those assets that are going to need to provide you income, because you don't want that to be going down in value because of a market downturn when you need it on a monthly basis. And then for each time horizon that we step out, 5, 10, 15 years, we can begin to take on a little more risk to receive a little more reward. You heard the bell in the background. I was just getting started today, and now we're going to have to end the show. But
some good stuff.
They put me on a time restraint. They keep me on a leash. So it's time for our final thoughts. Teresa.
I would say, in general, when you're making decisions about your financial journey, I think it's great to have a coach to help you make the plan, create that plan, outline your goals, and then walk you through it. I think just like financial goal or fitness goals, if you have someone working with you, you're going to have more success most likely because you're going to stay the course. So if you don't have a coach in your life, I would encourage you to reach out and get one and get started on your journey. Yeah, and to piggyback off of that, I'm going to tell our listeners and our viewers one more time about our offer that we have for the month of December. We told you about it at the beginning of the show.
that we are offering half off of a financial plan, half off of the financial planning fee that we would normally charge at GenWealth Financial Advisors if you call in the month of December and schedule your appointment. Again, to be clear, you don't have to come in December. You just need to make the phone call and set it up before the month is over. So it's a great way to end the year. If you've never done any financial planning, this is a great offer for you to get a discount on your financial plan and get on your path, if you're not already, to discovering, protecting, and sharing true financial independence. Here's how to do it. Just reach out with a phone call. 866-653-PLAN. That's 866-653-7526 to schedule your first appointment with a GenWealth financial advisor. And that's all the time we have for this week's Get Ready for the Future show. Glad to have you along. Had great questions. We invite you to get those questions to us. If you got anything on your mind about money, investing, finances in general, just give us a call. You can text it or you can leave a voicemail, 501-381-5228. See you next time.
The GenWealth Financial Team is available to you 24/7 at info@getreadyforthefuture.com or call our offices at 866-653-PLAN. That's 866-653-7526. You should personally consult a financial advisor before making any investment, and no strategy can assure success. Securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advice offered through Independent Advisor Alliance. Independent Advisor Alliance and GenWealth Financial Advisors are separate entities from LPL Financial.